gonna throw. One-on-one, Davis has it. Touchdown! Carolina wins! Carolina is the Coastal Division champion! Javonte Williams to the left of Howell. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howell looking, standing tall, lets it go, man there! Touchdown! Touchdown, Carolina! The pistol, Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson, he tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted! Surratt intercepts it! Holy cow, Carolina's gonna win! And off to Javonte Williams again, pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back, pressure coming, Aguilar floats it up, incomplete! No flags! Head on back up the mountain! Carolina wins it in double overtime! Loftus, out of the shotgun, throws to the end zone, incomplete! Incomplete! The bell belongs to us! Carolina wins it! 47-45 in double overtime!
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, with you guys as always. And tonight we are diving into Carolina football, or something that's Carolina football adjacent to that. We will, of course, get to where Carolina's roster is at now that they have added some guys in the transfer portal, some big pieces that Carolina adds along the offensive and defensive line. So we have to talk about that. What does that mean ultimately for Carolina for this upcoming season? We have to talk about, finally, all of the departures that have happened from this team and what Carolina now has to do with all those guys having left the program, where they go from here. Is this still a roster that's in good shape, or are there areas that Carolina needs to still fill out in order to have success this upcoming season? And then we will take a look at the Tar Heels that were either drafted into the NFL. There was only one guy that was drafted into the NFL, so a little hard to do anything more than that, or the guys that were signed as undrafted free agents or received invites to rookie mini camps. There is one guy in particular that has not received either one of those that we will talk about as well. So plenty of stuff coming up here on this edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast, but we got to start off the field, and we got to start with my least favorite thing to talk about right now. And this is what we were hoping would not come along with a new coach. I would have never thought that it would be this coach that we would be talking about this with, but here we are. Bill Bellichick and Jordon Hudson have once again drawn the ire and attention of the entire sports world, really the entire world in general, in what is one of the most awkward interviews that you will ever see on television. It was with CBS this morning, and there has been a report that has come out from TMZ that sort of details what exactly was going on. It was a very odd interaction. We'll let you listen to the clip here, and we'll kind of break it down here in just a little bit of what exactly all went down. But just a weird overall interview. This was supposed to be an interview that was promoting his book, The Art of Winning. Supposedly the reason that he was dressed the way that he wore a Navy sweatshirt. She did as well, was to honor his late father. That is interesting, especially considering that his late father did coach at Carolina. He had a sweatshirt that Bill brought to the introductory press conference that you would think he would have worn instead of that, as he tries to rep the University of North Carolina, the school that he currently is coaching at. But Belichick only, when he arrived to the interview, only arrived with Jordon Hudson. He had no one from his publishing company, no one from the University of North Carolina or any other reps that was with him. That was something that was seen as very weird. Most of the time, people, usually bring some sort of publishing rep or, in the case of an athletics coach, they're typically going to bring their SID with them at the college level. And Carolina doesn't appear to have one of those as we sit here right now. It seems like that is part of Jordon Hudson's role, which is going to be very interesting to see how that gets handled when it comes to certain interviews, especially when we get to ACC Media Days and he has to speak to, the ACC network, the ACC digital network, and then eventually potentially go on to Radio Row, although I feel like that is pretty much not going to happen at this point. Apparently, this is the thing, and we'll hear it here in just a minute when we play this one clip. Numerous instances of Hudson butting in to correct Bill Bellichick on everything, including football. So this is where it's starting to get concerning, is that we know, is very boisterous. She likes to jump in on these conversations and try to direct Bill in the direction that he should answer or whatever, sort of his PR rep and stuff like that. But it was, first of all, it's weird the interaction that they had that we're going to play for you. But then you also get to the point where she's correcting him on football stuff. That's what seems a little bit odd. So why don't we play the clip for you? And we're going to break this down. I will pause it at certain points and we will break down what exactly is going on here. So let's just let you listen to the first part of the interview. This is about a 2-minute clip altogether, but this is the first part of the interview. This is how the interview ends up starting with CBS this morning.
Do you feel like you were treated with dignity and respect when you were let go by Robert Kraft?
Yeah, well, it was a mutual decision for us to part ways.
He said fired.
It was a mutual decision.
Okay, so right there, little weird. Starts out already a little strange because you're saying to yourself, okay, well, that's certainly, not what Bill Belichick wants to hear. Okay, fine. Maybe that's the reason why it gets started off on the wrong foot. But then let's listen to the exchange a little bit later on in this edition when during the interview when they're talking.
The other change for Bellichick is 24-year-old Jordon Hudson, his creative muse, as he writes in his.
Okay, let's just stop right there. Because first of all, the creative muse thing, I mean, are you with me? The creative muse thing is weird. Like, that is either weird phrasing from him. We have never really heard anybody called that. I mean, that is certainly not how I would describe any woman or anything like that. You would say, someone that I love deeply, something like that. It seems like that is something that is written by her rather than that is written by him, which is weird in and of itself.
Yeah, first off, hey guys, my name is Josh. I'm your co-host, and what I'm saying tonight is my opinions, my thoughts, and not an email, not a written consent form from Jordon Hudson. That phrasing, the first of many examples of the fact that his significant other is speaking for him in a public manner. And as we learned later on today, like, she now is, that's why she wanted to be on the emails. She wanted to be on the email so she could reply. And so she could reply and speak for Bill, because there's a lot of different, names you have for people that you love. Creative muse is not one of them. Not even William Shakespeare would have called a woman that he had a relationship with his creative muse if she would have inspired some of his writing. So, yeah, that was the beginning of the oddity. And I think it's important to stress here, because I think people will try to nitpick that don't think this is a topic. The audio that we're playing is an excerpt of a pretty lengthy interview. The whole entire interview is cringe. It's odd. And if you read the TMZ report, was delayed. interrupted. They tried to reschedule it, and all of that went to the wayside because of his significant other. So we're not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. Like, this is legit. This is something worth us dedicating time talking about, because, as you mentioned, it's not just something the sports world is talking about. This will be on every talk show in America. This will be on your news programs, because this relationship has surpassed Swelsey in terms of reality and believability, let alone taking people by storm.
And that's not even the most awkward part, is what we've been to yet. So let's get to the first, like, the real public interruption during this sit-down interview between Bill Belichick and CBS this morning.
Look,
make sure that that's the
Jordon was a constant presence during our interview.
You have Jordon right over there. Everybody in the world seems to be following this relationship. They've got an opinion about your private life. It's got nothing to do with them, but they're invested in it. How do you deal with that?
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
not talking about this.
No?
No.
It's a topic neither one of them is comfortable commenting on, though Hudson has recently posted about it on Instagram.
You joined InstaFace, as you put it. I love that. There's some great pictures of you and Jordon, where you're a fisherman and she's a mermaid. It's charming. It's a different side of you. What's the reaction been like?
What's it been like?
To have these different sort of photos. There's another one where you're doing, I know you're not into meditation or yoga or Pilates. You're balancing Jordon on your feet, and she's doing kind of the Titanic pose.
Yeah, so I'm on some of those social media platforms, but I honestly don't follow them.
Okay. So, I mean, look, the ending is weird too, but whatever. That could just be him being awkward. He's not a social media guy. We know that he has been a little awkward just talking to the media in general. It's that middle part. And honestly, it's a little bit of the start too, where when we started playing it again, you heard that's what she said right there. That's what I want it to be referred to. That's what I want to be referred to. It's creative muse. Weird. Very weird. Okay. Then you move on to the interaction about them being asked how they met, or Bill being asked how the two met. It's a simple story. As far as we know the story, they met on a plane. It seems like it's legit because she put up again today on her Instagram story, pointing back to the first day that they met, which was him signing a book for her. I guess they met on the airplane that they were flying on, and they talked to each other. Apparently they hit it off. That's apparently where the relationship started. I don't really understand why that is so hard to explain that. I get that you want the focus to be on the book, but you can't explain how you and your girlfriend, who you are apparently very serious about, came to be in a relationship. I mean, I don't know about you guys. And again, maybe this is just me. I'm someone that I would love to tell the story of how I met somebody. That would be really cool. I mean, unless there is something behind it that is illegal, there's something behind it that is just, seen as taboo, something like that. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me why you would not want to tell that story. And especially, I mean, this is the first time that a lot of people are going to hear that are watching CBS this morning. This is not a sports broadcast. This is not something where, people are going to be very familiar with their story. This is going to be the first. Why is a 73-year-old, why is he dating someone that's in their 20s? It is a little weird. So I just, to me, it screams odd. And we have talked about this. Their relationship is as weird as it gets, because it has gotten weirder and weirder as we have gotten further and further from his hire. You got to remember that when he was first hired, we barely even knew anything about her. And now we've gotten to the point where we have seen that she's tagged on all these emails. She has complained about some of the messaging that's come out of the football program. She has definitely been talking to him about it, leading to him emailing or, potentially, or at least it coming from his email, an email about the messaging around one of their Valentine's Day posts or something like that, something around that time period where there were comments below it and basically accusing the program of approving of the comments that some people were having against the couple. It just continues to get odder and odder with these two. And I think you have to question whether or not it is going to start having an effect on the field.
Yeah, a lot to unpack from the second audio chunk that you played. One, I firmly believe he does not know what's been posted on social media, because you're talking about the most private coach we have seen in the history of modern college, or in the history of modern athletics, whether it's collegiate or pro. And we have now seen images of him posted online where he's dressed up like a fisherman and she's a mermaid, and they're doing, hot yoga where he's bouncing her on his feet. This is a guy that Randy Moss 15 years ago had to beg him to show up at a private Halloween dance party, which Bellichick in that clip, if you know what I'm referencing to, showed up as a pirate. So it's not like that side doesn't exist, because I think there is a side to him where if it's private, if it's closed and one-on-one, he'll let you in. I don't think he knows that those photos were public, which is why he reacted to the way he reacted to that question. When it comes to the question about how they met, first off, I want to defend the interviewer, because I've seen a lot of people that have gone after him. I don't think it wasn't an unfair question. I don't think he asked it in a bad way. I think he was a very curious question, but not curious in a bad way. It's, hey, you're this legendary coach that we've never seen crack a smile. You've entered a new phase in your life. You look happy. What's your story? Because I think, we would be open to hear that story. And it's not him that's shutting it off. It's her shutting it off 15 feet away off camera, which leads you to believe there's more to we just met on an airplane. And we don't know what that is. And look, there's a lot of different conspiracies that are out there. If you want to go have some fun reading those, you can go find them. But it doesn't seem that it was this happy-go-lucky thing that because every great relationship has a great backstory. And it usually starts with how you met. There's more to than we just met on a plane. And so the fact that she was present at the interview to begin with, while no one from Carolina was on hand, is problematic. And then the fact that she's answering questions off camera is even more problematic, because Colin Cowherd came to the defense of this. She is his PR. She is now speaking for him in a public manner, in a email manner, no matter what it is. He is now deferring to her. And if that doesn't make you raise an eyebrow, do you know who Bill Belichick is? Do you know what Bill Belichick is about? Because you think he'd let all the great players that he played check him like she checked him and have the control? This guy got divorced with Tom Brady because of control. And they're the greatest tandem of all time from a head coach quarterback perspective. But he would not give in. He would not light up. He kept coaching Tom like Tom was the 6th-round rookie draft pick. And that version of Bill Belichick no longer exists. And to be quite frank with you, it's not the version of Bill Belichick we got sold on. The Bill Belichick I thought I was getting was motivated, ticked off Bill Belichick that was going to college to give the NFL the middle finger and go to a program like North Carolina with not a track record of success, not a track record of winning, and go and prove to him I can still win at the highest level. And then he could go back to the NFL if he wanted to and really demand what he wants. I question if that's his motive. And if you don't question that as a Carolina fan, you're blind. Because if he was the Bill Belichick that we saw on the sidelines for 24 years, he would not be doing the things he has done really since the Super Bowl. Because all of the scuttlebutt around his relationship started at the NFL honors when he took her to the red carpet and made it, I guess, public is the best way to put it. Because everything that's come out about them since then has not been positive. It's been negative. And there's simply no way it's not a distraction and it's not impacting the program on and off the field.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, what are recruits' families thinking about this? And I know that you could think that, everybody wants to point out, well, they're doing great in the transfer portal. Yeah, they're doing great in terms of the number of commitments. In terms of the talent that they're getting in, not all that great. They've had some guys that have been hits, but for the most part, a lot of them are depth pieces. And we'll talk about that here in a second. What is this going to play like in the homes of families that are, 2026 commits or recruits? There are going to be recruits' parents that are going to get turned off by this and say, who's really running that program over there? Is it him? Is it her? How much is she involved? And, honestly, there is an element to it that is just weird. I think that we kind of knew that going in, and that was something that we just had to really, kind of turn a blind eye to. But I did not think she was going to be this involved. I think that's the thing that's really shocking. We knew that he was dating someone who was in their 20s, but I did not think that she was going to be nearly as involved as she is, because now you wonder, does she attend some of these recruiting visits? Is she going to step in and say something and try to correct him and make him look bad when he's in the house of a recruit? Something like that. I mean, it doesn't make sense why she is as involved as she is. And to say, well, he needs a PR person. That was Colin Cowherd's thing, was, he needs someone that is tech savvy, that knows the modern day technology and everything like that, being on social media. That's fine. If she wants to manage what he does on social media, that's one thing. Being his PR person, coaches in college football do not have PR people. You know who the PR people are for coaches in college football? It is your SID. Your SID handles all of that stuff. That's what Jeremy Sharp did.
Also, you know what his PR is? His 8 Super Bowl rings. That's the PR.
Well, I mean, you have to sell yourself. You have to sell yourself different. There's no doubt about it, because, I mean, as many people have said, and during this process, it's different than the NFL, because the NFL, you are picking the guys. When you're in the college level, the guys are picking you. So it's a little bit different. You have to sell yourself a little bit more, especially, and here's the thing. You have to sell the fact that you were not good the last few years in New England, because you weren't. You didn't win. So I think that's part of why having someone that can handle that stuff is fine. Mac Brown had Jeremy Sharp, and Jeremy Sharp did a tremendous job of handling that. He would say, when he would step in and say, when it came to football stuff, yeah, you can't ask that. Yeah, we can't answer that. Stuff like that. That's what that person is supposed to be involved in. I don't want you to say anything that you're not supposed to in terms of recruiting, transfer portal, stuff like that. That's when they step in and say, okay, enough's enough. Don't ask that question. Let's move on. Whatever. That's not what's happening here. This is a promotion of a book. And when you write a book, this stuff is going to be brought up, especially when you are as public of a figure as Bill Belichick is. And as she is, she has a very big following as well. It's not like she is just some random person. She is someone that is a model, that is a big social media influencer. And so she is going to be involved. They want to know about that. And to me, I think you're 100% right. I don't really understand why the question of how you met was really what sort of set it off. And then all of a sudden it became very hostile. And she ends up storming out of the room. That's why The interview actually got cut short because they were apparently the guy that was interviewing said, look, I've had enough. This is uncomfortable. We need to get out of here. They were going to reschedule for a different time to be able to finish it up. That was apparently canceled. Many believe that the reason why that was canceled was because of Jordon Hudson. So, it's just, it is very weird how involved she is with everything. And yeah, you do kind of wonder, is it eventually going to leak over into what he's doing as a head coach? Is he nearly as committed to being a head coach as he was when he was at the NFL level? Because if she says, hey, we're doing something this weekend, you need to be out with me, you don't need to be focused on the football program, is that really the best thing for this Tar Heel football program? No. I don't know that necessarily is the case. When they did this stuff with the photos of, the yoga poses or whatever, who really cares? That was during spring break. But during this time of the year, when you need to be buckling down, that's when you wonder if she's going to have certain things. Like, honestly, the promotion of the book is something that you wonder, is that getting in the way? Because he's going to be going around doing all these media tours trying to promote this book. And, really, should he be focused on trying to get this 2020 together with some of the big names that you've already had on campus and some of the big names that you have on campus? So, maybe we are reacting to this, and I hope that we are. I hope that we're the ones that end up looking really stupid. But this is what it has done for me. Now, you better win. It's going to be really nice if you do win. I think we all could have swallowed this. If it was a failure, this was something that we could have swallowed and said, you know what? It is what it is. We took a risk. We went out. We got an NFL coach, but it just didn't turn out. He was a guy that was just at the end of his career, and we probably should have realized that, but we tried. We dared to be great. This seems like this could turn into a complete disaster before it even really gets off the ground because of her involvement in the football program, and that's what concerns me.
Yeah, you go back to the day he was hired, the 24-hour cycle from the time he got hired to the time he got introduced, the podcast we did those nights. I basically gloating, basically telling you we're about to win big, because I bought in. Because you go back to that presser, that was the Bellichick I thought we were getting. Because he immediately went from the guy that was on McAfee on the NFL show during the week where he was open and honest to very short, very candid, and sounded motivated. Sounded like he understood. I bought in on, my dad coached here. That meant a lot to me. I think it's all crap. I think it was all crap. Because he hasn't been the same guy since then. And maybe when we go to fall camp, this thing goes away. But the fact of the matter is the Bill Belichick that I thought we were getting. And I don't want to say that you don't need to go out there and live your life and go on vacations and have experiences. You've got the money, you've got the resources, do it. But that's not what he would have been doing. And that's not what he's done in his previous 24 years. Like, that guy was in the office every day. That guy was in the office at 5 o'clock and left at God knows when. Do we think he's getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work? Do we think that he's burning the midnight oil, being at the office till midnight or later? I think that answer is no. This is very much, I think, a 9 to 5 where I'm getting paid $10 million. I've got Michael Lombardi. I've got a front office of guys doing all the dirty work. I don't have to do it. I can show up when I want and do what I want. And make no mistake about it. We gave him all of that power. We gave him all of the leverage. Like, we put our ball in his court because Carolina was going all in. You can't convince me that if they looked into their crystal ball and the crystal ball showed you this would be the 6 months after he got hired, what it looks like, they hire him. Because I don't know how the program has benefited. The roster is worse than it was when he inherited it. I think he put together a good staff to be determined. All the publicity that I thought this program was going to get, where he was going to market Carolina, and we were going to be kind of not as chaotic a version of what Deion Sanders was doing at Colorado, but we were going to be in the same breath. Like, we were going to be a national talking point every time these people talked college football. His program's in worse shambles than what Deion Sanders has ever done. And yeah, you're being talked about, and you're being talked about in a 10 times negative way than the stuff that Deion was doing. And Deion's had his fair share of run-ins at Colorado with the way he's talked to the media, how he ran players out, et cetera, et cetera. I firmly believe there's a scenario where he doesn't coach a game. I firmly believe that if this does not go away, if this does not become quiet, that when that buyout drops, it's in June or July, where Carolina goes to him, gives him $1 million, and say thanks but no thanks. Because if you're asking yourself right now, honestly, is it worth it? And right now the answer is no, because the path to winning isn't as visible as we thought it was going to be this time upon the hire. Like, we didn't buy into the whole playoff conversation that a lot of people started talking upon his hiring, like Kirk Herbstreit. Some of these guys that run models were putting together 12-team playoff fields with Carolina in the playoff. We never went that far. But was a 9-10 win season in play if he did to the roster what I thought he was going to do to the roster with the schedule they had? That was very much on the table. And the exact opposite is worse, to where if this thing does see its way through, and I want that to happen. Like, I'm not rooting for him to fail. I'm not rooting for him to go away, because I think as much as anybody, as someone who does a podcast about the team, bought in, was all in on the hire. I thought 8 or 9 wins was on the table for this team, and the most fun, productive year content-wise was on the table for this team. Look at the podcast we've done in the last 3 weeks. When have we talked about the team first? We haven't. It's been something around the team, and that was not the expectation either. So I know guys like Myron Goodman, Lenny, that are commenting. We appreciate you being here. And y'all don't think this is a story, but it is. And the only way to make it go away is to win. And nobody wants to win more than us as fans. Like, we value winning as much in football as we do in basketball. I don't see that. I don't see that happening year one. And the scuttlebutt around the program is starting to get there, to where Carolina's making it known. Yeah, this isn't right. This isn't cool. You still, at the end of the day, work for us, and something's got to change, because you're not representing Carolina as an institution and a program as the way that you are expected to be represented. So that's where I am. We'll see what happens moving forward. Because either her involvement is going to take a back seat, or he may be put in a position where he has to choose his relationship or coaching. And I mean, that would be an unfair situation to put anybody in. And I'd hate to see that be the way this thing maybe comes to an end.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to get to that point this offseason. I believe that he will at least coach this year, but you do wonder, if this stuff continues, especially throughout the season, how much appetite do they really have for it moving forward? They may say, look, it's you got to make your choice here. Either she becomes quieter and, you pretty much get her out of the program, or, we're going to have to move on and we're going to have to find a new coach, because this is why we are having these conversations already, is because according to TMZ, they reached out to people around UNC. And again, not sure what around UNC means. That could be people on campus. That could be people in the athletic department. Not sure what exactly it means, but they are apparently concerned with Hudson's influence on Belichick's tenure as the head coach in Chapel Hill, especially with her taking on the role essentially of his manager. And as a source puts it, there is a growing sense that this could become a problem. So I think that's what we're worried about is it going to bleed over into the football, the on-the-field product that you're going to see? And, is he nearly as committed as we thought he was when he took the job? Because if he is, then that's fine. Then Carolina is going to win, and this will become a non-story. But right now, with the uncertainty as to whether or not Carolina is going to win, some of the guys that Carolina has been losing to the transfer portal, and the fact that this roster is in the spot that it is, I think that it's a fair question to ask, and it's a fair thing to be concerned about. You can choose not to be concerned about it. Hey, that's fine. If you want to remain positive, that's great. I've been around Tar Heel football now for nearly my entire life. I mean, from the age of 11 on. And I've realized that, it's when it comes to Tar Heel football, if it can go wrong, it's going to go wrong. And so that's why it's hard to believe that it's not going wrong again already for Carolina. Really quickly, don't think we'll get to the NFL draft stuff, but did want to talk about where exactly the roster is right now. And you look at where it is. I mean, the portal now officially closed. The only guys that can enter are graduates. So if there is someone that is a graduate, they can enter at any time. But Carolina loses 23 scholarship players to the portal. Of course, the big names that we've told you about that Carolina has lost: Bo Atkinson, along with Amari Campbell on the defensive side of the ball, Ryan Brown on the offensive side of the ball, along with Christian Hamilton, another guy who was a starter. But Carolina just losing a lot of depth here, as we've talked about. I mean, a couple other guys that entered since the last time that we were on here. We talked about, of course, Amari Campbell. Well, then Michael Short, a reserve linebacker, ends up entering the transfer portal. That was a guy that was probably going to play this year. Really had flashed for Carolina, in the regular season finale against NC State. Also looked really good in the bowl game for Carolina as well, alongside of Caleb Lavallee. But he's gone now to the portal. So Carolina very, very thin at the linebacker spot. You've got wide receiver Evan Haynes. That's a true freshman that came in. Now, the thing about him, he was a guy that was committed to Mac Brown, ended up deciding to stick with Carolina through the coaching transition and move on. Then there's Jarrell Cobb, the running back from in-state that Carolina ended up getting. That is a Bellichick guy that has already entered the transfer portal as a member of the 2025 class. So, look, Carolina goes out, gets Benjamin Hall. That could have been part of the reason why he ends up leaving, but still not a great sign that he ends up entering the transfer portal. Ryan Ward. This is one that you may be saying, who the hell is Ryan Ward? Why don't I know about him? He's a guy that's a tight end. He was one of the guys that really stood out during the Practice Like a Pro event, had 2 of the touchdowns in the event of the 3 that were thrown to tight ends. So clearly Carolina's best receiving tight end that was in camp. He ends up entering the transfer portal. So now Carolina's got to pivot and find somebody else at that position, whether it is Jake Johnson, who steps up. He had a tough year last year catching the football when he was out there, was really used as a blocker more than anything. And then Connor Cox, a guy who hasn't really played a whole lot in his career coming over from South Carolina. He's in the portal. You got edge rusher Curtis Simpson. That's more of a depth piece that Carolina loses there. But again, the edge rusher spot, a little bit, not nearly as thin as some of the other spots on the team, but you do end up losing him. The big one that you end up losing was Rodney Laura, the defensive lineman. That was a guy that was projected to start for Carolina, or at least with the group that Carolina has brought in since, probably would have been a rotational piece for Carolina along the defensive line. Now they're going to need somebody else to step up into that position. So here's the thing. What does this ultimately mean? We're reading names. We're telling you how important these guys are, but can you actually give us any stats? This was tweeted out by Andrew Jones of Tar Heel Illustrated, who did a good job, not even a good job, a great job of compiling all of these different statistics. So during the spring portal window altogether, Carolina lost 9 offensive players that combined for 322 snaps last fall at Carolina and over 1,000 career snaps across those 9 players. They had 14 receptions for 230 yards and a touchdown last season. Okay, doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but then when you, of course, factor in that Carolina is not getting back J.J. Jones. He is officially going to the NFL, one of the guys that was signed as an undrafted free agent. He is not going to be coming back. He's going to try to make that roster now. You've got Nate McCullum, who also graduated for Carolina, so he's gone as well. That's a lot of receiving yards that's gone. In their career, that group of 9 players, 41 receptions, 633 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That certainly would have been very helpful for Carolina to have those guys around this season. 11 defensive players that combined to play 1,312 snaps last fall for Carolina in their careers, combined for 1,766 career snaps. What you lost in this spring portal alone on the defensive side of the ball was 127 tackles and 15 sacks for Carolina last fall, including the top 2 guys on your roster in sacks, both Amari Campbell and Bo Atkinson. They were the leaders on the team a year ago. They're gone. In their careers, the guys that Carolina lost, 163 tackles, 19 and a half tackles for loss. Total snaps across the board, 2,859 offensive and defensive snaps walked out the door for Carolina during the spring. So you said it, and I think you're right. Why? So the question is why? Why do you believe that this roster right now is currently in a worse spot than it was a year ago?
Well, hey, you don't have any idea. I mean, I guess with the fact you brought in Gio Lopez and you paid him $2.1 million, that guy is going to be your quarterback. Where did this roster get better in the last 4 months? And specifically, I lost my sneeze. Sorry. Excuse me, guys. When you look at the production that you lost in the spring transfer window, that's the most alarming thing, is the fact that, and it's mainly you're looking, and we're talking about Atkinson and Amari Campbell especially, but you lost production, you lost experience. That I think, are these guys outside of Atkinson and Campbell, are these guys superstars? Are they all conference players? No. But I think they would have eased Bill Belichick's transition to the college game. I think it would have made it easier to believe with the reinforcements he was bringing in that Carolina would maybe not be more gifted, but would be deeper. Something that, was something that Mac Brown's staff really struggled to develop was depth during his second stint in Chapel Hill. So I think that's the thing, is that you look at every turn at the roster, and I don't know where they got better. You might get better quarterback play out of Gio Lopez, out of Bryce Baker, than what you got out of last year between Max Johnson, Connor Harrell, and then Jacoby Criswell. But outside of that, man, I don't know where this roster is definitively improved. And as much as I believed in anything Belichick-wise, I legitimately thought players were going to be throwing themselves at Carolina to come play for him. I believe that. And maybe that's because I thought that Carolina had $20 million at their disposal. Guys, Carolina does not have a $20 million football roster. Maybe I don't know where that money is. But the money that, remember, Belichick demanded, that was the last hurdle to get him here, was the NIL money. Somehow they told him you'd have $20 million at your disposal. This is not what a $20 million football roster would look like. Nonetheless, I thought the roster would be better, and it's not. And look, if him and this staff can coach, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe less is more, and he's not making the critical coaching mistakes that Mac Brown's staff has made. But at the college level, players are just as important, if not more important, than scheme. Like in the NFL, you can scheme your way to wins. You can out-scheme an opponent and win a lot of football games. In the regular season, you get exposed in the playoffs. In college, you gotta have dudes. How many dudes this team got right now? Not as many as you thought they would have. So, he can use the built-in excuse that he didn't get hired till December 11th, but there were some pretty impactful transfers that entered the portal in the spring, and Carolina's done a decent job, I think, landing some of those guys. The defensive lineman from Florida, supposed to get the defensive back from Florida as well, but I really thought there would be some star power added to this roster, and I don't see any stars right now on this football team.
Yeah, and I mean, he went out and got one in Thaddeus Dixon. I thought that was a great pickup from him out of Washington. And
love the two Washington additions to the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, well, you got three, but you're talking more Kamori House and you're talking Thaddeus Dixon, because the area that got better, I think maybe quarterback. You have to wait and see what exactly Gio Lopez is. Maybe, and this is a huge maybe, is your offensive line. Because the offensive line that we saw in the Practice Like a Pro event is not better than the offensive line that you had last year. Yep. And that's saying something. Because Howard Sampson was not great and Trevion Green was not good. Trevion Green's still starting for you at right tackle.
I think the only way we're talking about the offensive line being improved is because of the coaching. Like, I don't think the talent level on that area group is better than it. And that was what was so frustrating about Mac Brown. He recruited good offensive linemen. He got talent there. They just couldn't develop it.
Yep.
It feels like they've gone with kind of low risk, high reward on that side of the ball, on that area, which means you are putting a lot of stock in your ability to coach them up. And if that happens, great. Carolina's got a chance to at least be explosive on offense, because I still think, I do think Gio Lopez can be a difference maker, and I do think they could score 28, 30 points on a week in, week out basis. If it's not, and you can't coach up the talent that you got on that position group, you'll be talking about an offense that I think could really look like it looked like at the end of the Larry Fedora era, because those teams could not block and they did not have good quarterback play. If Carolina can't block, they don't have a chance in hell.
Yeah,
they don't got enough difference makers in the backfield and the wide position and at the wide receiver room to overcome that.
Well, we don't know. We have no idea. We could have great difference makers at wide receiver, but we have no idea. So we're going off of what have these guys done previously in their careers, because Bill Belichick doesn't want to give us anything. And you look at what they've done in their careers, most guys haven't played. Yeah. Or if they have, it's very sparingly. So we don't know what to expect. Yeah, I want to be excited about Jordan Shipp. I think he's a guy that, judging off his high school career, could be a really good player. We haven't heard anything. We don't know how he performed in camp. Like, was he good in the spring? Was he a guy that looked like a possible future number one receiver? We have no idea. So, I mean, we don't know anything about this team. So all of this stuff is speculatory. But, I mean, from what we can gather, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no way that they're better at running back. That's a bar that is just way too high. I still think they're going to be really good there, but they didn't improve at running back. Wide receiver, they didn't improve because you don't have any veterans in this room. You could say, well, maybe the talent is better. No, the talent is about the same, because when it comes to landing 4-star prospects at wide receiver, because that's what Adrian Wilson was, and people will point to him in the transfer portal, man, Mac Brown was landing 4-star wide receivers. That was a position they were not having an issue with landing guys at. They have done their job there, and they found their guys that they need. And this staff went out, added a few guys in the transfer portal. Ultimately, I don't think the position is better, though. Tight end, you're not better at that position. Offensive line, like we said. Now, I'll tell you, I like the guy that they added today. Willow Steen at offensive tackle. I mean, he's a guy that's played for 3 years. He started for 3 straight years for Jacksonville State. I know that that's a team that just made the leap a couple of years ago to the FBS level, but they were one of the better FBS teams, and he was coached by a guy that's now coaching in the power conference level once again in Rich Rodriguez. And you look at him, steadily improved over all the years. This past year, his grades, according to Pro Football Focus, he had a 76.4 run grade, a 72.7 pass block grade, and a 78.7 overall grade. So a lot to like about him. I think there's potential there. But again, I really like Chad Lindbergh that the team brought in from Rice earlier this offseason. Thought he was a guy with his background of having gotten recruited to Georgia would really step up and be a piece on that offensive line. He's a part of the second team offensive line. He hasn't been able to make any sort of waves. So this is another guy that's coming up from the group of 5 level. We have no idea ultimately what he's going to look like. So that offensive line may not even be better than the group that you had a year ago. We have no idea whether or not it actually is. And I get it. They took a shot last year on Howard Sampson, and look how that worked. But, I mean, I think there's reasons to be concerned about where this group is at because Jordan Hall, the other addition that Carolina made along the offensive line, I don't feel like he's really going to be able to be much. He played, sparingly this past year, just 156 snaps, including a career-high 83 in his lone start of the season against South Florida. His grades are not that great. He was a guy that really struggled. I mean, he allowed 0 sacks, but gave up 9 total quarterback pressures and 114 pass protection reps. At that rate, you're going to be giving up, probably if you're starting along the offensive line, you're going to be giving up almost 30 quarterback pressures in a year. And if you're giving up that many, you would imagine that there's a decent chunk of them that are going to be sacked. So I don't really know how much that pickup helps Carolina. That feels like that's just another body in that room. But then you get to the defensive line. And is this room better than it was last year? Oh, God, no. Not even close. Not even remotely close. And you could say whatever you want and believe that, Bo Atkinson really wasn't this great player. You guys are just hyping him up. Bo Atkinson was the best edge rusher that you had on this roster, was poised to be an all-ACC type of player with the expanded role that he was going to have this year. Now you've lost that, and you're putting it on Bryce Yates to be great, the transfer that you got from Connecticut, and then you're placing it on some of these other guys. You go out and you get a Joseph Moipoi, a guy who I like and I think has some upside as a former 4-star prospect in the 2023 recruiting class. I mean, you look, the guy has played in 2 games in the last 2 seasons. So far in his career, he's played 4 snaps. That's it. And that's a guy that you're relying on coming in and breaking out of his shell. And look, in high school, his numbers were good, man. Final year, 54 total tackles, 26 tackles for loss, and 14 sacks. Can you get that guy to show up, though, right away when he gets to campus? I don't know that you can. DeAndre Robinson, another former 4-star prospect. This is the guy I like the most. Played, 162 snaps as a true freshman this past year at Florida. And look, it's going to be hard. You had 2 guys that got, or 1 guy that got drafted, 1 guy that got picked up as an undrafted free agent. And one of them, you were not going to be playing over the 464-pound Desmond Watson, who was just a freaking monster and just stuffed up the run as well as anybody in college football this past year. But Cam Jackson, also a really good run defender. This is a guy that I think has the qualities to be a really good player, had 17 total tackles and 3 tackles for loss, along with 1.5 sacks in those 162 snaps, which is solid. But I don't think he's a guy that you're looking at and you're saying is a star, a superstar along this defensive front. You're hoping that that happens, but right now you can't say that. And then Isaiah Johnson, the transfer from Arizona, Carolina gets him. He's another guy. Last year, most snaps that he played, he played 170 snaps, compiled 9 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. That's great, but those are rotational numbers. So that area of the team, even with how much we complained all these years about Mac Brown not being able to get consistent defensive line play, that defensive line that Carolina had last year is better than the group that they have this year. They are definitely not better at linebacker. Linebacker is a place where right now they have a massive hole. They have Kamori House, and then who else? They have to figure out who that guy's going to be, because it better not be Mekhi Bayor. That's a guy that you brought in to be a rotational piece. He has started before, but that shouldn't be a guy that you're trusting to start on this team. So I come back. The only area that I look at this team and I say I know definitively that I think that they are better in this year is the defensive back room, because of Thaddeus Dixon at the 1 corner spot. And that's not a slight against Elijah Huzzie. I just think that with a little bit of extra size, Dixon has a chance to be a better player. And it's mainly because of Gavin Gibson, who's in the slot, the transfer that you got from ECU. That's a huge upgrade because I think he'll be better than Caleb Koss. Everybody else is still a question mark. And even special teams, they're not better. Not even close. They have a huge question mark at kicker. They're relying on a guy that they just got out of the spring portal in Reese Verhoff, who was inconsistent to say the least at Marshall. You're still relying on Tom McGinnis as your punter. I mean, where is the talent on this roster that we thought was going to be there? And you're right, man. I think, I cautioned people about this when the hire was made. Guys, it's going to be really hard to get to $20 million right out of the gate. That's something that you're going to have to build up to if you're ever going to get to that point. That's what I think they sold Bill Belichick on. And this is a roster that looks like, if they have the money, and I don't know if some of these reports, they haven't really said. They've just said that Carolina is bargain shopping. If they have the money, they are going cheap and trying to find guys that they think just fit the culture that they want, which may work. But as we've seen with Bill Belichick towards the end of his time in New England, you need the talent to be able to succeed.
Yep, and I think I know it's weird coming to the defense of Bill after 57 minutes of railing against him. That's really will be more on Michael Lombardi, because his main job as the GM is to identify talent, but is to manage their cap and to manage how much money is being spent. You can talk about building up to it. The fact of the matter is that the report was he was going to be given $20 million. That wasn't $20 million in year 2, $20 million in year 3, whatever it was. It was, when I show up, there's going to be a Brinks truck backed up to the facility. I'm going to have $20 million. I'm going to go buy a roster. And let's be frank, if this fails, that'll be his excuse. His message will be, I was not given enough funds and resources. We'll have to see how true that is. Part of that is well, they committed $10 million to you. They committed $1.5 million to Michael Lombardi. Who else? I doubt, the guys that you're bringing in to fill out your front office, I'd imagine you're paying rather well. You're paying your coaching staff, I think, very well. So there may be a scenario where Carolina ran out of money. And with the House settlement not being passed, you don't have $14 or so million set aside to help put together your football roster. But regardless, you still did not do what you were, what the immediate thought was you were going to go bring dudes in. It feels very much like a low risk, high reward type of guys. And if you hit home runs, great. I don't know if there are enough guys on this roster to where if you just hit, singles or maybe doubles, if they're really going to make the impact you need these guys to make with all that you've lost. So, and you know, this is a learning experience too. Who knows? Maybe this time next year, if Belichick is here, him and Lombardi have a better plan. They've got their process down. They know what to do a lot better, how to run this stuff a lot more cleanly, a lot more effectively. We don't know. It has to play out. But I never once thought we'd be sitting here in late April and talking about a roster that looks closer to what Mac Brown inherited when he took over for Larry Fedora, as opposed to what Mac Brown left behind at the end of his second tenure.
Yeah, and even with that, I still believe that this is a roster that can probably win 6 games. 7 games would be probably the max that I would look at with this group. But I mean, yeah, we thought we would be talking about a roster that could potentially compete to win the ACC. Could at least, compete to be in Charlotte, go down to the final couple of weeks and be right there on the doorstep of potentially playing for an ACC championship. Right now, I don't see that. I see a roster that is probably good enough to make a bowl game. And with the short lifespan that you're going to have with Bellichick, you know that it is not going to be that long with him. It is probably a few years. Maybe he gets to 4 at the max. You need to be able to capitalize on every year. So if this is going to be that year where they start out and things are a little bit slow because they had to overhaul the roster and all that, well, then the next year better be where Carolina is landing all these significant names and they're bringing those guys in. And they're off to a good start in the 2026 recruiting class. Now, part of that is the volume of guys that they have committed. Don't get fooled by the fact that they are ranked as high as they are. The big part of that is that they have so many guys committed already. That's the reason they're ranking that high. They have talent. There's a few guys in there that are certainly talented, but it's not nearly as loaded of a recruiting class as that would have you believe. So we'll see. We'll see where Carolina ultimately is at, but we need to know more about this group as well. We need to know more from the coaching staff because we could be in a much better spot. We could be much more positive about the direction of the program, but we don't hear anything. The only thing that we're hearing is the negativity, and the only time we're seeing them speak is the negative stuff that is coming out from Bill Belichick, from Jordon Hudson, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that stuff subsides. Hopefully we get a little more media availability at some point here with Bill Belichick, just so that we know what is ultimately going on with the program. Some of the former guys, by the way, just really quickly, that Carolina ended up seeing get drafted, sign as undrafted free agents. Amarian Hampton gets drafted in the first round by the Los Angeles Chargers. There is an article up on the website for you guys to read. And then there are 9 guys that received undrafted free agent deals with teams. You can go to the website, read about all those guys. And then 1 guy who received an invite to rookie minicamp with the Atlanta Falcons and the Kansas City Chiefs. You can also go read that on the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Just go to the undrafted free agency tracker article, and you guys will be able to read about that and the weird situation that's going on with Kamen Rucker. Somehow still unsigned. He's trying to remain positive. This is a guy where if one could find rent, like we saw from Mel Kiper defend Fedora for Kamen Rucker. Fortunately, we don't this edition of the podcast or the website. All of that covers the other news out around Tar Heel football, the transfer portal. Josh told you about Carolina getting involved with hosting a safety from Florida. Carolina doing a lot of work there out of the Florida program. They're hoping to get another commitment in that defensive backfield here within the coming days from Gregory Smith. Read about him on the website. Carolina hosting him for a visit. You can read all that. And then we'll have you covered if he ends up committing or if any of the other, if there are any other transfer portal targets that the team ends up having here in this spring portal window. Meanwhile, on the basketball side of things, Carolina, as far as we know, still searching for someone that can help them on the wing after they lost out on Andre Stojakovic. Josh has an article about missing out on Stojakovic that you guys can read, and an article about someone else that Carolina is currently interested in. Will they be able to pull that player in? That's going to be the question. But we'll have you covered on the website all throughout the rest of the offseason if Carolina does end up making any more additions to the roster, or what will happen with Vin Allen Lubin and his situation. All of that stuff will be covered on the website as we get more information. Same thing on the podcast side of things for basketball, the Four Corners podcast, wherever you get your podcast, same place that you get this podcast as well. If you're a live viewer, it's right here on the Heel Tough blog page, over on Josh's Twitter page, or YouTube as well. So make sure that you guys are checking that out. Again, best way to keep up with everything that is going on is to do one of two things. Either go to the Twitter page, follow the Twitter page, and turn on those post notifications. You'll get notified anytime that we have a live video that's up, in addition to the podcast that gets posted, or most importantly, the articles that get posted to the website. Or you can just go to the website, HeelToughBlog.com, check it every morning, afternoon, and evening for all of the latest news and opinions around Tar Heel football and basketball. So that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. Guys, I want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.